Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The current long-range meta in Warzone is looking extremely competitive. You've got a bunch of different options, whether you're looking for some higher risk, higher reward choices that maybe are a bit more difficult to use but offer some seriously insane stats, maybe something a little bit more reliable, laser beam-esque. There's a lot of solid options, and today I wanted to break down the absolute best long-range meta loadouts to be rocking, starting first with one of the most reliable ones in the game, the Kilo 141. This thing is one of those laser beam-esque options that is extremely easy to use and yet has a pretty rewarding upside here. This thing is very competitive over the mid to long range, great velocity, great recoil, great range, great TTK. Checking all the right boxes here, right? So first up for the optic, this is really a matter of preference. As always, I really like the Otero red dot, so I'm rocking that here. But if you like a Kepler red dot more, or a Microflex, or a Willis 3 times, whatever the case is, feel free to use whatever optic you are comfortable with. I also go for the monolithic suppressor here, extends out our range and our velocity, and of course keeps us off the minimap as well. And I pair that with the reinforced barrel, which gives us even more range and velocity. We're sitting at a 1275 velocity and nearly a 49 meter effective damage range, so that's going to feel fantastic whether you're fighting at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 plus meters. You're gonna be able to stay on target, and it's gonna feel like it's hitting because that velocity stat is so good as well. Vertical foregrip gives us the best horizontal control and some recoil stabilization, just makes the weapon a lot more easy and predictable. Then lastly, extended mag 2 here is a 60 rounder. We've only got a 750 RPM, which is not anything too crazy, so 60 rounds is going to be sufficient there, whether you're playing solos, duos, trios, quads, doesn't really matter there. This thing is incredibly consistent. Like I said, one of the most reliable options in the game. Now, by far one of my favorite feeling weapons in the game, the GRAU 556. This thing is, as the camo implies, bananas. Easy to use again. Feels like it hits so well over the mid to long range. Really competitive TTK here too. Clean iron sight based build here for the most part. It's still not that one-to-one OG GRAU that we had back in Warzone 1, but it's the next closest thing and it gets the job done quite nicely. So here on the SWAT 556, you want to switch on over to that GRAU 556 conversion. So that's obviously the most important part of this entire setup. It sets up everything else we're rocking here, including the monolithic suppressor. Now keep in mind, we can't use a barrel because the conversion kit essentially acts as one. So with monolithic being our only source of true better damage and range, we still have a 1277 velocity and a 47.5 meter effective damage range. Again, putting in that work there, this thing's gonna feel great. Vertical foregrip makes this thing incredibly easy to predict in terms of the recoil, really just making it mostly straight vertical, which is always super convenient there. The only extended mag option here is a 50 rounder, so of course we got to be rocking that. And then lastly, I've been going back and forth between the balanced stock for some better general movements and a little bit better strafe, and then also infiltrator, which is better strafe as well. This focuses obviously just exclusively on strafe, whereas balanced is a little bit of both there. You can see which one works well for you, or maybe you want a faster ADS. You could rock a quick draw grip here. If you're not a fan of the irons, you could always throw in an optic if you wanted to as well. But yeah, overall the GRAU incredibly easy to use as well, and it hits. Now on the inverse of easy to use and competitive TTK, we've got a little bit more difficult to use and insane TTK in the form of the AMAX. This thing noticeably more recoil than something like a GRAU or a Kilo, also though a noticeably better TTK at the same time, right? So higher risk, higher reward here, but it's not insanely difficult to use by any means. Like, there are far more weapons that are harder to use than this, and so you spend some time getting used to that recoil pattern, you're set. This thing will melt. Again here, I'm going for that Otero red dot just based off my personal preference. Monolithic suppressor for the better range and velocity, and reinforced for more of the same. 1230 velocity, 64 meter effective damage range. Noticeable jump up there in that effective range versus the Kilo and versus the GRAU there. This thing is a beast over the mid to long range. Vertical foregrip yet again for that max horizontal control, and then of course extended 2 on here as well. So you got a 632 RPM here, so it's not like you're gonna burn through ammo with this thing by any means. And like I said, it hits like a truck. This thing's got insane power. And right alongside that, we've got the AK. In my opinion, a decent bit more difficult to use than the AMAX. The recoil here is just more obnoxious in my opinion. You can absolutely counter it still, just means your setup is going to be a little bit different, a little bit wonky compared to some others. But the TTK also has the chance to be a little bit faster than the AMAX at several different ranges here. So just a matter of, can you control this better or can you control the AMAX better? What's going to feel more natural to you? And that's probably the one you want to lean, but both of these are fantastic choices objectively at the end of the day. Once more, I am rocking that Otero red dot. I feel like I'm very accurate with this one. Now, here, because there is noticeably more recoil, I do do opt for the compensator as opposed to monolithic, we lose out on some velocity there, and obviously we show up on the radar, but your TTK doesn't matter, your stealth doesn't matter if you can't hit shots on your enemy and they figure out where you're at to begin with, right? So compensator helps me stay accurate there. Reinforced barrel, we're still going to have over 1,000 velocity, which is typically the benchmark you want to have at minimum for a mid to long range gun, it feels like in this game, and still a 51 meter effective damage range too, which is fantastic. Of course, vertical foregrip for the max. Horizontal control here, obviously still very important. Then I go for extended 2, it's a 50 rounder. If you want to jump up to extended 3, you absolutely could. Also, this is a gun that really benefits from using gunfighter and getting more attachments. You can throw on recoil springs, get even more recoil if you wanted to, an infiltrator stock there, quick draw rear grip if you wanted as well. So that'd be something to look into in my opinion. Typically, if you're rocking these first 5 attachments, that's kind of the setup you could copy and paste on a lot of different ones for a gunfighter build. But yeah, the AK, it's got some huge upsides. Now back to another relatively easy to use option here. We've got the Cypher. This thing is extremely versatile. It works fantastic here in the mid to long range. Again, low recoil, competitive TTK, good ranges. It's also something though at the same time you could build for like mid range, for sniper support. You could even go all in a mobility and almost have this as like an AR SMG hybrid. One of the most versatile options that we've got in the entire game, quite frankly, which is really, really fun in my opinion. So here I actually have switched things up. Volsky Reflex is another one of these options that I do really enjoy. Oturo, you know, VOK 3 times or Willis 3 times, whatever it's called, right? Always plug and play with whatever one you want to rock there. Monolithic suppressor again, because this is easy to use, so better range and velocity. Reinforced barrel for even more. 1166 velocity, 52 meter effective damage range, falling right in that perfect criteria for an effective mid to long range gun. In this case, I actually go for the Ranger foregrip because I feel like I don't need as much recoil control horizontally as some of those other options. This one's largely predictable, so I don't have to go all in on vertical. If you feel like you're much better with vertical on there though, feel free to go for that. I like the added sprinting movement speed that Ranger offers on top of the recoil control. And then extended to here, another 60 rounder, 561 RPM, gonna work fine for all squad sizes. Really fun, again, a really easy to use and straightforward option here. And hey, by the way, as we are going through all the weapons and setups here today, if you guys enjoy the video, you find the information helpful, a like rating is always seriously appreciated. It really does help grow the channel, and share the video around to new viewers. And if that happens to be you, you're one of these new viewers, or maybe you have not subscribed yet, we should change that. Each and every day, this is the place to be to stay up to date with all things going on in COD. News, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns, it's all right here, so feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. Next up, another relatively straightforward option. We've got the GPR. This, much like the Cypher, is an extremely versatile option. We've talked about sniper support builds for this as well, mid to long range based builds like this one. It can do a lot of things, and it can do a lot of things effectively, which is always a great thing, right? So here in this case, Willis 3 times, why not shake things up a little bit? Again, matter of preference though. Monolithic suppressor, range of velocity, reinforced barrel, more of the same. 43 meter effective damage range, but the drop-offs are not too harsh until you get out to some pretty extreme distances. And 1100 velocity as well, 1123 there. So again, falling right in that solid criteria there. Ranger foregrip here as well, so sort of the same deal as like with the Cypher. I don't find this thing too terribly difficult to use for recoil, so I like getting some mobility where I can get that back. And then extended to here, max option, 60 rounder, 714 RPM, you'll be sitting pretty for all squad sizes there. Relatively standard rifle setup, but it feels great. Now, it's not just Black Ops 6 weapons dominating the long range meta right now. Because of some of the updates that Season 3 Reloaded introduced, the TAC-56 is also a very viable option here, and something that I think feels really fresh because we haven't been using the TAC-56 in quite some time, of course, right? So this thing takes some getting used to because it does feel different. It is an MW2 gun, but you get past that little entry barrier there and you're set. This thing can really hold its own quite well. I personally like the iron sight based build here, so instead I opt for Spirit Fire suppressor. This will work the same as any other suppressor, extending out our range and our velocity. Then the Tundra Pro barrel helps out with range and velocity as well. 58 meter effective damage range, nearly a 1200 RPM there, off by 0.2. So this thing's gonna feel really consistent at 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 plus meters, right? Any vertical on a barrel is going to be fine here. They're again doing all the same things for the recoil control, just making the gun easier there. 60 round extended mag, very straightforward. And then lastly, I like high grain on here as well because that's going to factor into that range and that velocity stat alongside the barrel and our suppressor, of course. Now, if you wanted to focus more on some recoil, you could do something with a rear grip. If you wanted an optic, you could throw that on there. Unfortunately, we don't have a gunfighter option here that's not accessible for this, but even with 5 attachments, this thing can hold its own. The M4 is also in that same conversation, something that we really haven't touched in quite some time. It's been, you know, an option that was there, but you're really only using it for fun. You weren't using it competitively. Well, now you can use it competitively. Pretty easy to use for an MW2 gun. Really good range in TTK as well. Here I am more so inclined to use an optic. The irons aren't really that crazy. I go for the 2.5 times Eagle Eye there. Quartermaster suppressor actually helps out with recoil control as opposed to some of the other suppressors, which are velocity and range based. I like the control here a lot. I just think it makes the M4 way more accurate over the long range, where its TTK is going to be truly competitive with some of the best options. This is ensuring you're going to be as competitive as you can be, right? High tower barrel on this, we're still up over at 1100 velocity and nearly a 60 meter effective damage range because of the velocity and range boost that this offers, on top of the fact that we also have high grain ammo on here as well. Then lastly, I go for the 60 round extended mag on here, which feels fine as well. We got an 811 RPM, which is a little bit higher, but 60 is still going to serve you just fine in any squad size there. I think there are some viable builds where maybe you swap out high grain for an underbarrel to get more recoil, or if you're comfortable with the recoil, switch out quartermaster for something that gives you velocity and range and go overkill on that. A couple of different builds, all of them are going to be solid because the base M4 now is just really good. Now, definitely one of the highest skill gap options here is the Goblin. This thing can have an utterly absurd TTK with very specific stipulations. You gotta fire it at essentially its max fire rates, and you have to stay on target. That's not easy to do with a semi-auto gun like this. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of time really mastering this gun. But if you can do so, it's got an extreme upside, right? So here, kind of a unique setup. Again, go for whatever optic you're comfortable with. Willis 3 times for me. Monolithic suppressor, better range, better velocity on their reinforced barrel, doing more of the same. 1131 velocity, 60 meter effective damage range. We're sitting pretty there. In a 5 attachment build here, I actually end up going straight up for rapid fire. And on semi-auto guns, the recoil is only as bad as you spamming it as fast as possible. Obviously, the faster you spam, the more recoil is going to be noticeable, but it's also something you can learn over time, right? If it were to hurt the range and the velocity, we wouldn't rock this, but because we can get that faster fire rate, it means the TTK, in theory, can be even faster as well, which is huge. Then also to coincide with that, I go for extended 2. I think with an 8 attachment build here, putting on an underbarrel like vertical or even precision, I think would be fantastic. Putting on a stock like infiltrator, you could also use a rear grip like quick draw, and you'd be fantastic as well. 5 attachments, it works. There's a little bit more skill involved. 8 attachments makes the gun a little bit easier. Again, if you can learn this, you can master it, it's going to be such a dominant choice. Also, post-edit Zach here completely forgot to go through the setups for these on my initial recording here, and I'm editing this like, wait a second, I gotta drop these in here. 2 marksmans right now are utterly insane, the DM10 and the TR2. Again, higher skill gap weapons, similar to that of the Goblin, but with these, DM10 setup gonna be pretty straightforward, although it does have one unique option here. Whatever optic you want to run, I opt for the Willis 3 times, reinforced barrel, better velocity and range, extended mag 2 here, rapid fire for the best TTK possible. Then I also really like the buffer weight stock, helping out a ton with recoil control, obviously making life a little bit easier there. Of course, if you wanted to upgrade to gunfighter, you could throw on a suppressor there with monolithic, rear grip for a faster ADS, whatever the case is, right? Upgrade in the various areas we've talked about already, but yeah, that is a super solid option, as is the TR2. In this case, it's kind of a preference. Would you rather stay suppressed with a better velocity, adding in a monolithic suppressor, or do you want the accuracy as you're spamming, going for a compensator? Test it out, see which one works better for you. Both options are good there. Whatever optic you want to rock, extended 2. Vertical foregrip I think is solid here. Obviously, as you're spamming it more, you're going to notice the recoil more, so that can help stabilize things. And then reinforced barrel for that better range and velocity. Each of these, like I said, higher skill gap, but very dominant in the right hands. And this might be the first ever back-to-back post-edit Zach, because in a recent update, they also ended up buffing the KRIG in the time since I originally went through, recorded this, and then re-edited it with the previous post-edit Zach. So we got to include the KRIG in here too. Again, use whatever optic you want. For me, I like the Jason Armory 2 times on the feel of this thing. Extended mag 2, pretty basic there. Monolithic suppressor, of course, reinforced barrel, plenty of damage range and velocity there. And then vertical foregrip, like this thing is noticeably easier to use now. Hits pretty hard as well. It's a fresh take because it's been just kind of an awkward weapon before where it was decently competitive. Now it's truly competitive with very little drawbacks. And then of course, we can't talk the long range meta without talking about a few different snipers, the HDR being an obvious one here. Of course, infinite one-shot headshot range, super easy to predict the bullet drop and the bullet lead. This thing is just utterly insane. Here, monolithic suppressor, focusing just on the better velocity there. Gain twist barrel, also focusing on the better velocity. And we also have overpressured ammo. Range does not matter on this gun because it's got the infinite headshot range. Velocity is the only stat that matters. And stacking all 3 of these on here, we get over a 1200 velocity. That means the bullet drop and bullet lead, like I said, is going to be very, very easy to predict, which is really the only skill gap on this gun. Quick draw rear grip's going to help out that better ADS. We're sitting at a 585, not too terribly slow for a gun that's this dominant, right? Then lastly, I really like the lightweight bipod on here, helping out that aiming idle sway. Just makes it easier to stay on a target and line shots up without having to hold your breath every single time, right? So, you know, just making the gun more reliable and more consistent, I think is always a good option there. No surprise to see the HDR on this list. And then lastly, here we've got the LR762. For what it's worth, if you wanted to bring the Frostline into the conversation, it's quite literally a copy and paste setup, so you could just apply the exact same attachments. But I personally think the LR762 is a slightly better long range option than the Frostline, simply because it has a better one-shot range on here, right? So monolithic suppressor helping out the range and the velocity. Keep in mind, it's not an infinite one-shot headshot in this case, so any range stat that we can improve, that's going to help out there. For instance, we go for the long barrel here for the better damage range. We end up with a 94 meter one-shot headshot range. The velocity, though, still 1269, actually better than the HDR, because we are still rocking an overpressured ammo on there to help out that velocity as well. I then go for the quick draw rear grip, helping out with that ADS. I actually stack fast mag 2 on here as well. This ends up helping out with your ADS speed and a quicker reload in exchange for losing 1 bullet off the default mag. That's a trade I'll take every single time. We end up with a 566 ADS, which is a little bit faster than the HDR there, of course. So this, and then like I said, the Frostline, basically the exact same setup as well, both viable options too. But that being said, this long range meta has options on options, each of which thrives in its own unique way, whether it's easy to use with a competitive TTK, a little bit more difficult to use with an insane TTK, or it's a dominant sniper. You can pick your poison here. All these options are going to thrive. That said, that's going to wrap things up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy. Have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.